I'm flipping cool. Look at me, I'm the best. I did it. So this is what the insides look like.
Blimey.
Well,
Yes.
let's go find him. Mornstar should be able to deal just as much damage to the monsters in here as it can to the horned one. Alright. That means we'll play as Evan with his glorious sword. Fine by me. Oops, used it twice. She's a hungry girl. There's only a flippin' trip door. Fancy that.
Huh?
Who puts a tripdoor in the belly of an impossibly evil ancient being?
Well,
Horn One was Allegoria's kingmaker. It's an integral part of the kingdom.
huh.
Whatever the reason, I'm not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth. Cause really, why are you gonna be looking at horse's mouth? That's like weird. What if they like try to eat you? That's why. It's like they looked the gift horse in the mouth and then they just ate him. And that was it, and they fucking died. Hello. I guess we get closer to the end of the game, I guess I could give my, like, little mini thoughts and review on this thing, maybe. Could potentially do a little bit of that. We'll wait for the next cinematic to play, though. Because right now, we seem to have found ourselves in what this old place used to be. Like, suddenly it's all green and beautiful. That's good. You don't need to end every game or have the last area look dark and dreary.
What the?
Is this a city? The heck's going on? Could this be Allegoria? Did we somehow find our way into the dimension that swallowed it up? I think not. I believe what we're seeing is Doloran's desire to give in form. This is not Allegoria, it's a memory of as it once was. So none of this is real?
Oi!
Oi! She said it. Well, he must be doing it all the way up there. I guess my overall impression of the game is we're pretty much near the end here. Like, we're in the final area, we're closing in on the final boss. The game's good, it has the potential to be even better. But, like, the game being fairly easy, I think, hindered it a little bit. Not again, the poo gas!
Roland!
I'm fine. Bueno. Such a pleasure to welcome visitors to my realm. Though many souls have joined me here, you're the first to do so willingly.
Ugh.
Doloran, we won't let your plan succeed. We're gonna stop you. Of course you are. Try as you might, boy. You can't even hope to touch me. I look forward to seeing you suffer. Old Snakeface may talk a good game, but he's, you know, he runs like a coward. So, like, my main thing with the game, the main negative I would say about the game is that it is, in fact, fairly easy to go through. But it's weird. I haven't really encountered this with any other game where everything about this game feels like they tried to make it the most digestible RPG. And it very much is. You have systems that you can really, really work on, but you don't really necessarily have to, and I did quite a bit with some of the stuff here. You have that. What is this? Sure. Oh no. What? I'm sorry! I'm sorry! I didn't mean to do it, Daddy! I was saying for the most part, the game is very easily digestible. Overall, the combat is fairly simple and works effectively, but the game doesn't offer you much of a challenge in the main game for the most part. You have to go out of your way a lot of the time or just be under-leveled. And that can be a major gripe for other people, where they, you know, a hard mode is something that could really substantially improve this type of thing. But they seem to be a lot more focused on making this a nice casual ride. You can also feel that in the plot. Very much, I was talking about it before, how episodic things feel with the story, where you're solving the problems of various areas well within an hour to an hour and a half of gameplay at most. Whether you're going into Broadleaf and you're learning everything about what's going on there and solving that problem. That takes about 3 videos, maybe 4 at most, if you're doing a Let's Play like me. And that can be a negative for people, because you want some time to cook, and I feel like it didn't do well in a few certain areas because of that. If I was to narrow it down to a specific one, it would probably be everything that happened in Hydropolis, where I don't feel like there was enough time spent there to really get into it. And it's just an effect of the game just going through things incredibly quickly. Doesn't give them enough time to breathe. Like that just can be a problem. Like, Leander is an interesting character, but there's not much done with him for me to really care about him enough. They did Bracken decently well, because they gave us enough time to really get a connection with her and care. And Leander, there wasn't enough, I think. Like, you get what his character's about, but I feel like that it could have been done a little bit better. And I'm disappointed that they didn't give it the proper time. It's very weird, because this is kind of an example of something that I have run into in a lot of games, where sometimes I feel like some games are just spinning their wheels and going a little bit too slowly for my taste, and would like them to really get into the plot-relevant stuff a little bit faster. This is a game that does that, but does that a little too much, in my personal opinion. Which leads the game to feeling... It doesn't even feel, like, incomplete in any way. The game's dope. Look at these production values. It's fantastic. Game runs like a dream, plays great, looks awesome. This is fucking cool, by the way. But I just feel like sometimes some characters ended up feeling a bit redundant. For example, Batu is, for the most part, fairly redundant, but he has a couple of moments. And Tani, I think that's her name? That's how bad this is, by the way. That is a character that we have in here that is worthless. You rescue her, and it's like, she's like, cool, I'll go with you. I can drive planes. That was the extent, and that's all her character really has, aside from her figuring out something with the dice, which any other character could have figured out. And that's a problem with a lot of JRPGs, but it's disappointing. I would have loved if every single character had a reason to join you, and it had a bit more going on. But unfortunately, a lot of characters become irrelevant, and that's a problem with a lot of these. Like, you want every single one of your party members to have importance in the plot. Evan, his importance is obvious. Roland, his importance is obvious. Bracken, her importance is obvious. Lofty, absolutely. Leander, absolutely. He is very knowledgeable about things. He's made various different gadgets and done stuff like that. Batu, they just give him scenes. Tani, they don't give her any scenes. The 2 things she's done the whole game is like, hey, I'll drive the plane to the place to get Lofty and the wedding bit. That's it. That's all you get. Also, it looks like we'll have plenty of time to speak, because we have 4 of these things to take out before we can go. These are the, hey, have you grinded yet? No? Let's give you a little bit of an opportunity.
Watch your backs.
Inky Wriggle. I thought it said Inky Winky, and I was about to shit my pants. couldn't be that cool. But overall, I feel like what happens with a lot of games is if you're really positive on it, you tend to overextend on its flaws, right? You end up being a bit more critical about its shortcomings. Either because you think it could be better, or just you know, because it's interesting to talk about. There's a lot more to do in terms of talking about the faults of something, as opposed to the praising something. You know, it's the same way that it's harder to be nice than it is to be mean. But this is just, it's one of the gripes that I have. And it's that, you know, a lot of the party members seemed unimportant after their introduction, like those initial two. The rest of them, they did an okay job. And the game, I feel like, takes a little bit... It goes a little too fast. I feel like you could have added an hour to every chapter and built things up a little bit. But then again, is it bad that they do that? It's something where I have to question whether or not it's a negative thing. It's just something I've noticed that I feel like maybe not everyone will like. But this also becomes the question of, should JRPGs be as long as they should? You know, should they be as long as they normally are? You encounter so many of these damn things that are like 80 to 90 hour affairs, and you'll find that some parts drag. And this game doesn't have a chance to give you a moment that ever drags, because it's just getting right into it. It's something I expressed as soon as we started playing. Immediately, we get thrown into the game's world, and within 10 minutes, I've done a tutorial fight. I've done a stealth segment in the first episode, I've done multiple skirmishes, fights, cutscenes. It's done well. So, the approach, I think, is alright, and overall, I think this is one of the most approachable RPGs there is, and I think I also have to praise the designs in the game being nice. The designs are really nice looking, and I'm gonna be honest, as I'm getting older, I'm finding myself liking a lot of character designs a bit less, because they focus a little bit too much on the cheesecake. I'm talking fan service. Like, I like Xenoblade 2, but goddammit, some of those designs are like a little messy. And a little, I don't like that necessarily. But then this game does it very tastefully. It makes it something where you could really give this to anyone. And I'll say the difficulty and the pace of this makes this really good, especially for younger people. Maybe, you know, I'm older than a kid. I'm like in my mid-20s, so I'm looking for a lot more to chew on with games in terms of challenge and that kind of thing, but I'm sure for a kid, this seems fucking perfect. It's not wasting your time in the slightest. You're getting to new, cool, exciting things all the time. And the game isn't completely devoid of challenge, either. Those tainted monsters can really put you through the ringer. I did plenty of them, and felt quite engaged by them. Ah, is that the... that's a green. Damn. So, what else is there? The music, fantastic. Reminds me of the music that you would hear in your classic 80s and 90s like animated films, which I'm pretty sure the person who composed this does Ghibli films, which isn't surprising because the sounds perfect. It really delivers and really adds to the experience. The cel-shaded look of the game looks good. Visually, it looks pretty damn great. And what's the last gripe I have? I have two main gripes. I have two main gripes, and I've told you one. There's a third one that's kind of subjective, which was the whole the game's pace is a little fast. But I don't know if that's really a gripe or not, because I'm not too broken up about it. This has been one of the most fun Let's Plays to play. A lot of times, there's some games where I'm like, I don't know if the game's the best, like a Zero Escape, but recording it is a very fun experience. You know what I mean? But this has been fun on all aspects, so I can't say that's a gripe. But my first main gripe was they didn't give all of the party members in this game the biggest amount of importance throughout the story, which made them feel secondary and more of a, when you see them in a cutscene, go, yeah, but why are you here again? You know what I mean? So, the second main gripe, and I think everyone knows it, voice acting. when you play a game this polished, with this amount of visual flair, where there's so many great quality of life things, you can easily fast travel, you get all of this really awesome shit. But then you have voice acting, this little amount of voice acting. It's very disappointing, because this is the kind of thing that I would expect from a game on early PS2. Because I want you to put it in perspective. Final Fantasy X, that came out in 2001, I believe? Full voice acting. Even for random NPCs. I know it cost them quite the pretty penny at the time, because, you know, they were pioneers when it came to, like, that much heavy voice acting in such an amount. And, of course, some will fight to say the quality of it wasn't perfect. But that set a standard. It has been 17 years since then, and this game has not even, I wouldn't even say a third of the voice work of a game like that. And of course you could say the Final Fantasy brand, but come on, man. Come on. This is a big JRPG. Even some of the low budget compile hard games I feel like have more voice acting than this. And I don't even let's play those things. They're scary. But I think that's my biggest gripe. There are so many moments in which voice acting could really elevate a scene, and I feel like a lot of it is lost on it, to the point where they have those, like, 15-second cutscenes that establish a moment, or something like that, and it just doesn't... It feels awkward. Again, it feels old. And people were saying that there was full voice acting in the original Ni no Kuni, which kind of feels weird that they... skirted that, you know, they kind of like downgraded in a way. So that's a bit unfortunate. Darkproof Saint's Mantle. We're gonna want to put that on you. And for Roland, we're gonna give you the Happy Crystal. And we're gonna give you the Wizardly Crystal Robes. But at its core, I feel like the voice acting, it just feels like they cheaped out on it, to be quite honest. Because most of the dialogue in this game and the voice acting that they inject into it in the like, hype-looking cutscenes that have, like, full motion, where it's like they directed a scene, as opposed to people standing around and then the text flying. There's plenty of voice sections in this that have that. So, what I'm personally finding is that they just didn't go for it. Doloran's a youthful king, but one whose bond with his kingmaker strong and deep. Alright, so I just feel like that they just decided to not really go for a lot of voice acting here. They cut the budget for that. And this game has gotten a couple of delays, but it is a bit of a disappointment. But overall, at its core, I think this game's fantastic, but it has some low points that really prevent the game, in my view, from being like the all-time greats. Like, when you think of like a top 10 JRPG, there's some shortcomings there that could, you know, it could be in tension in the bottom 10, in my opinion, at the very least. If I was to rate this on like a 10 scale, I'd give it a 9. I'd give it a 9 because those faults are keeping it from being like a 10. But overall, a 9 out of 10 is damn good, because in my own personal scale, I would view, for example, any game that's a 5 is just, that's the average score. It's not that kind of mentality that some people have of 8 out of 10, anything lower than that shit sucks. But I would say this is good, but it does have some shortcomings that are very much unfortunate. And they become a lot more apparent when you're playing a game with this amount of polish to it, you know? When everything else about the game is really good, but there's one factor that comes short, you notice it all the more. But overall, I'm really happy I played this game. A lot of people I talked to said that this is infinitely better than the stuff they did in 1. And seeing some gameplay of it, I don't know if I'll ever do the first Ni no Kuni, but if I do, it will be a good while from now, especially this year. I have a lot of projects in the pipeline, but I'm very happy I played this because this has been a joy to record. And I cannot say that about some projects where Sometimes I felt like I was getting bored with the story at the time. Sometimes I felt it was way too challenging at points on certain games. And just here, this never had a chance to annoy me. It never had a chance to do that, and its faults weren't the worst thing in the world either. It kind of reminds me of Star Ocean 5, which is Integrity and Faithlessness. Now, that game was 20 episodes long, full LP on the channel. That game isn't very good at all. Like, it is the most nothing to write home about game I've ever played on this channel. But the thing is, it was 20 episodes. 20 episodes ain't shit when it comes to stuff. I have stuff like Persona 5, which was over 5 times the length. The whole thing is that that game was just painfully average and nothing to write home about, horribly cliched, and it was just, in the end, it didn't do anything to make me hate it, and it was so short that its overall averageness never really factored into me feeling negative about it, with only a few specific low points in it in design. And this is the same idea where this game also never really had a chance to really piss me off or do stuff that I didn't like. Like, it was so quick and easy to finish in a similar way, but the quality shot up. I get that same feeling where it was such an easy and fun thing for me to go through all of this, and I just didn't have a problem with any of it. But unlike Star Ocean, the quality of the game is much, much higher. Of course, I'm not going to blame them and say that they fucked up when they made that game, because let's be honest, the budget for that Star Ocean game was incredibly low, and you could tell because that game didn't even have the level of cutscenes this game had. It was, we're gonna make you walk at a slower walk speed and just have voice dialogue. By the way, Star Ocean 5 had more voice acting than this. That's fucked up. I just had an epiphany. It's like when Dr. House figures out how he can solve the patient's, like, death mystery. Anyway, we got one more crystal, but overall, I really like this game. I'd say love. I love it. Can we talk about... Let's talk about the other factors of the game, because we haven't really talked in detail. I talked about the combat. Story-wise, super simple. It's super simple, and it's not annoying or anything, so I guess it's alright. Like, this... Not... Overall, I think it did a good job of establishing twists. Like, this is what's going on with the Queen. She isn't evil like you would think. Or, Pugnacious, who I didn't know was actually being manipulated until they, like, kind of revealed what was going on with that. Or, the twist with Bracken. It's like, oh, you know, I'm missing a leg the whole time, which actually... I didn't really react to it, but I kind of felt that... I felt that weird, I would say, like, feeling in my stomach of like, oh man, that sucks, you know? Where you empathize with a character. And the game at least managed that. And I think that's really great. And the story is just kind of simple and jolly. And, you know, I feel like that's just the direction they were going for it. And all the better for it. I think, for what it tried to do, it handled it pretty damn well. And there's no low point where I'm like, this is lame. Because the game's pace is so fast that if there was ever a plot point that was lame, they got away from it quickly. And a lot of games have that problem where it's like, oh man, there's like, this thing's 2 hours too long. This you could argue it could be longer at points. And if that's a problem that your game has, you're doing a good job. You've done well. I don't even need that yellow ball. Skirmishes. We could talk about skirmishes. Those are fun. I find them to be fun. I wouldn't engage with it a lot, though. I feel like the game only made me engage with it a bare minimum, and it was enough to make me go, this is a perfect amount. So I never hated it. And I ended up enjoying it every time they had me do it in the story. To the point where I did a little bit of it in the side stuff. Side quests. I guess we should talk about that. Those were good. Side quests were fun. They were snappy, quick to do. Traversing the world, perfect. Roland's dead.
Roland!
What? What in the fuck? Oh shit, he woke up! He woke up!
Daddy,
You're okay.
Oh.
Daddy, I was so scared.
You're safe now. I'll protect you.
Will you? Really? I'm sorry. It's a little late for that.
I think this is the... What the fuck? I think... I was talking about how kid-friendly, approachable this game is, and it did that? Holy shit. Yeah, let's go back to when you're a strapping young lad who didn't watch his child melt. Oh. I have to wonder what the fuck is going on with him. The only other thing I kind of wanted to talk about was the kingdom building. I've idled in this game for 40 hours. That should tell you. It's fun, reminds me of ActRaiser. Overall, I really enjoyed it. But that's it. That's it, folks. That's pretty much all of my final thoughts and what I think about the game. I wanted to make sure that it was condensed at this point of the video, as I'm looking at my recording, to make sure that it would be in one episode. Because sometimes I fuck that up. But overall, it's really good. It's the game does everything really well. It just has some shortcomings that are unfortunate. But overall, when it comes to LPing this, I've had a fucking fantastic time. And with that all said, let's save. I don't know if this is like our final rest or anything, but let's see. Ah, there we go. Now then, into the inner chambers.
Oh my.
We should eat something while we have the chance. I also should remember to equip the new wand they gave me. The Shining Flutterbeast Shaft. Be careful, dude. Oh, crap.
Fish